In today's episode, we're going to be repairing these scratches on this front bumper of this Toyota Camry. I'm going to walk you through step by step how we're going to take care of this and make it look like brand new. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. This is Garage Noise, where we teach you how to build your skill and increase your knowledge about paint and body repair. So let's dig in and get started. Okay, so here's a good look at the scratches in this bumper cover. Very common, but what we need to do is we need to sand those smooth, remove all that loose plastic, and get that area prepped out for some filler. So what I'm going to use is my little angle grinder here. This is an orbital sander. Now you can sand this at home. You don't need to have a tool to do it. You can do it by hand. We're just going to use some 180 grit sandpaper on this angle grinder, and we're going to smooth that out and get it prepped out for some light body filler. So today we're going to repair just this scratched area. We're going to repair the scratches and we're going to paint it and blend just that area. We are not going to paint the entire bumper. You do not have to remove the bumper to repair this. So when you're sanding this out by hand with some 180 grit sandpaper, keep that area as small as possible. If you have to tape it off so you don't get very high on this bumper, do it. Sand just those scratches, smooth them out, and just about a ½ inch around those scratches. So when you lay the filler in, it has a good sanded surface to grab. There's a couple reasons to sand this out and get this prepped out. One is to remove that loose plastic and to get it smooth for the body filler. And the other is to promote adhesion for the body filler to stick properly. Okay, I'm going to sand this out with my orbital sander here, and as you can see, I'm keeping it as small as possible, not going very high up on that bumper. Now you can do this by hand, it's just going to take a little bit longer. But as you can see, it's nice and smooth now. All that loose plastic has been removed. We feather edged out the edge of that paint so it's a smooth transition, and now we're ready to apply some body filler. Okay, so now we've used the 180 to sand this smooth. I'm just gonna clean this area with a little bit of prep solvent so I can see what I'm working with here. I may have to buff this panel to remove this dirt, ground in dirt, especially on white. White dirt gets ground into white, and then if you're not careful, you'll end up clearing over the dirt and you won't be able to, and you'll be able to see it underneath your clear. Makes for a poor repair. So you can do all this stuff at home. You don't need a machine to sand this out. You can sand all this out by hand with some 180, and then you can use some rubbing alcohol to clean the panel. You don't need prep solvent. Okay, so now it's nice and clean. We're going to use some Roberlo crystal glaze with this small area here that needs to be filled and these small gouges. It's going to work perfectly on this. Just a little bit of filler in there and then we'll block it smooth. So let's fill this. Okay, so I got a little glaze step here. We're going to stir it in, fold it in so there's not a lot of air pockets. This stuff is very smooth and will work perfectly for this repair. So I'm just going to get a little bit on my spreader here, and then I'm going to, I don't want to go past this line here, so we're just going to spread it in there nice and evenly. There's a little lower area right there, so we're going to fill that a little bit extra. And now we have to hit underneath because there's a few scratches underneath. So you're not going to be able to see this, sorry. But I'm just put a little on here and smooth it in. See how we're going to keep this repair as small as possible. This is how you want to do it at home. So now that's filled, that should be sufficient to sand it out, and then we'll be able to prime it. So let's let this cure, and then I'll show you how we're going to sand this out, prime it, and paint it, and clear it. Okay, so now this is all dry and ready to be sanded. We're going to go ahead and sand it with some 180 grit sandpaper on my block here. This is just a hard block, and we're just going to keep it as small as possible and sand this smooth, and then we'll go over it with some 320.
Okay, so now it's starting to look a lot better. But as you can see, there's a low area right there. I blocked it flat with the block and it showed up this low area. So we need to add just a little bit more filler. It's a little bit high right here and then it's low in this section here. So we're just gonna put another thin skim coat over that and then we'll block it again and get ready for some 320 grit. Okay, so let's lightly block this with some 180. Okay, now let's hit it with a little 320. Sand out those 180 grit scratches. Of course, we're keeping it as small as possible, so. Okay, now it's all sanded with 320 and look how fine that is.
Okay, so now I'm going to buff this corner of the bumper to make sure all that ground in dirt is removed. Now you can just do this several ways. You can do this by hand with some compound or some cleaner that's going to remove any dirt. I'm going to use this Milwaukee buffer. It's just a little bit quicker because we're going to be blending once we get it primed and sanded, we're going to blend the color up a little bit above where we put the primer. Then we're going to blend the clear coat a little bit above that. And then we'll wash it in with some automotive paint reducer to help that new clear coat bite into that old clear coat to promote adhesion.
Okay, so now we have it all taped up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to mix up some 2K urethane primer and we'll prime that area. And the urethane primer is a catalyzed primer that's going to harden over that surface. And it'll be a good primer that's sandable, that we can smooth it out afterwards. So if there's any remaining fine scratches, they'll be able to be sanded out and it'll cure over those scratches. Now you could use a lacquer primer and you could go over this if you're doing this at home with 600 grit and smooth it out and then use a lacquer aerosol can primer, or you could buy a 2K urethane primer in a can and you could use it that way. So let's go ahead and mix up some primer and get this primed. Okay, so I got my volume turned way down and I've got my fan pattern turned all the way down to, so it's a small spray pattern right there, see? So I'm just gonna spray it like this, very small. Put a good coat of primer on there. Flash off a little bit and we'll put another coat on. Okay, so now we have this bumper ready to sand. We're gonna use 600 grit sandpaper and I'm just gonna use it on the DA and smooth it out. And then I'm gonna go around and hand sand all the edges with 600. And then I'll show you how we're gonna prep this out for paint and clear.
Okay, so let me tell you how I'm gonna prep this out for paint. I'm gonna go a little bit above the primered areas with 600. I'm only going to put paint over the 600 grit scratches. And then a little bit higher than that, I'm going to sand that with a scuff pad that is a 1200 grit or a 1500 grit scuff pad. That's a finer scratch for the clear coat blend, okay? I lost the footage on painting the clear, but I wanted to explain to you how we're going to do that. And then right at the end, after we put our final coat of clear on, what you want to do is put a little bit reducer in your gun, and you can spray that over that blend line, and that'll help melt that clear into the old clear. Okay, so now I'm putting the first color on. Now this particular bumper is a tri-stage finish. That means it has a base color, it has a mid-coat pearl, and then you put your top coat on, which is your clear coat. Now I'm keeping the base color as small of an area as possible. Now, if you're doing a pearl coat, which you probably are not, then you do want to go a little bit further with your pearl coat. So you probably want to go 2 to 3 inches further out past your base with your pearl, and then 2 to 3 inches further out with your clear coat. Okay, so now I'm putting the mid coat on, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the clear coat on. I did miss the clear coat and the blending footage. If you want to see another bumper blend in its entirety, check out the video at the end. But let's take a look at the finished product. You can see this is a nice clean repair. You don't have to remove the bumper, and you don't have to paint the entire bumper. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.